back to our fourth COVID recovery webinar. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you again. For those of you that have been on our webinars before, again, I'm Allison King, CEO of Beauty 360 Consulting Group, which is the preferred partner for business education and one-on-one salon consulting for the Cal Salon Division. But more importantly, my husband and I own 2 salons in Brooklyn, and as you know, we're kind of all in this together, right? And working through the process. When we talk about kind of where we've been and setting up today, there's a couple things I want us to think about. You know, for those of you that have been on the entire webinar series, we started talking about being prepared financially. We then started to talk about what social distancing could mean and what some of our safety protocols might look like. And our last webinar, we started to gear up and talk about sales and started to think about how do we maximize the appointments that we can have on the book? How do we look at the services that we're going to offer? And even how do we look at our rebooking cycle differently so that we can more quickly build that rebooking base back under our business? And I think each of those have been a very important component about what we do. As we go through today, I'm probably going to give Christine a little run for her money because she not only handles the chat for us, but we're gonna try to get some group interaction as well. So what I want us to do with some thumbs up to kind of get started, is there anybody that this is their first Zoom meeting? Give me a thumbs up if it's your very first. I can't imagine it now after so many weeks at home, but just checking in. Okay, I have no thumbs up, great. And I can't get it to move this time, but that's okay. And anybody, is this your first time on with me? Do you see any, Autumn? I don't see any. Okay, I've got one, there we go. All right, awesome. So the other questions I just want to kind of ask in getting up and running is anybody on the webinar already open? Give me a thumbs up if you're already open. And let me know if you see any, Autumn. It's not giving me the option to go page by page this time.
I don't see anybody.
Okay, so everybody on the webinar so far. Anybody opening in the next week? Because I know we've got some states that are in the process. Nope, okay, cool. And so everybody's on Team King, that we're just sitting home waiting for somebody to tell us someday we'll be able to open. Yay, all right, well, we got a big Team King here then. As I'm in the same boat. I listened to Cuomo right before we got on, and it's like, okay, I'll still wait. So we'll see where we go from there. So what I'd like to do before we get going is today's going to be a little bit different than some of our other webinars. And we've talked a little bit about what we've covered so far, and we've covered a lot. Would you agree? If you've been on our webinars before, kind of give me a nod. We've covered a lot of material, haven't we? So today, I want to take what we've covered in the last 3 webinars and really start to put it together so that we can build a strong execution plan. You know, what we're going to have to do in the first month, we've covered the nuts and bolts of it. But now how do we put it together in a way that's going to be manageable and in a way that's going to motivate our team? And one of the things that I see in the biggest misses when I coach, and whether it's owners or salon managers, is so many times we come up with these great ideas, right? And we come up with these great ideas, we tell our team what to do, and then we only so that we get frustrated a week or 2 later, so because things don't continue, right? We start to see the performance drop off. And that can be frustrating. Has that happened to anybody here? I know it's happened to me before, right? So today we're going to talk about what we've learned and putting it into execution. And as we go through the examples today, what I'm going to use as my template is our virtual consultations, because I know even on the questions after the webinar, I've got a lot of questions on the virtual consultation. But the method that we're going to use, we can use for any of the initiatives that we talked about. So while I'm talking through how I might set up virtual consultations, how I might train it, and how I might coach it, whether I'm doing my new rebooking strategy, whether I'm working on something technical, and we'll talk about a few things that could be used for as well. This method is the method that we use all the way through. Sometimes it let me use that, sometimes it doesn't. So as we go through today, what I want us to think about is today is all about leveraging our people, right? We've spent a lot of time focusing on our business, thinking about what's next, planning for safety and disinfection, and social distancing. But the reality is the next step is about our people. And The funny part is this is where reality is going to kind of check in. We've all had different levels of engagement with our team, right? Some of us have talked to our team a whole ton. You know, even with my team, I have a lot of people I talk to regularly. I have a few people I talk to every now and again, and everybody's excited to come back to work. But then what's going to happen as I talk to owners that have already opened is then we're going to get the date, right? When it's now time that we actually can start to think about opening. And what's going to happen in that moment is anxiety, fear, excitement, and probably a whole bunch of other emotions that I haven't thought of. But no matter how prepared you are, what we have to remember as a team is we're not going to have all the answers. And what's going to be super important through this is even when we don't have all the answers, that we're able to lead with confidence and we're able to really listen, observe, and pivot as we go. A lot will be different for our team and for us, but we have to lead. And the most important thing we can do is lead with communication. When we slow down and we really take time to develop our team, I mean, think of it this way, the more we can take some time on the front end to prepare our team, the more they're going to feel at ease about coming back. And I think in the salon owners that I've talked to that opened, you know, they have a range. You know, I have one that everybody wanted to come back, but I've got some that 50% wanted to phase in. They weren't ready to come right at opening. It wasn't like they were leaving, but can I have 2 more weeks? And the average has been about 30%. So I think if we start to think now of how we could start to engage the team, and I know we've most of us have laid our whole team off, or they've furloughed them, whatever you'd like to call it. But I think if we could start a line of communication to get them to start feeling comfortable about everything that we've done in a way that demonstrates leadership, I think we'll have the ability to build their confidence before we start to get there. And here's why it's important. I mean, let's think about what's going to be different. First off, visually, right? We're going to have thermometers, masks, gloves, you know, just depending on who you are and where you are. Emotionally, we're going to be really dealing with the aftermath of COVID. And, you know, as we talked about on our last webinar, really being able to think about how we prepare our team for every client sitting in their chair to really be, you know, as we joked last time, a kind of a COVID-free zone, not only for safety and disinfection, but like we can't have our whole day emotionally be about COVID, because that's not going to wear well on us as the stylist. And so as your employees may want to phase in, what you'll also see is your clients may want to phase in as well. And, you know, you may have a group of clients. Some of the salons that opened last week, their first week, or opened in Atlanta 3 weeks ago, their first week wasn't their busiest week. Once the first week got about halfway through, then week 2 and week 3 and week 4 started to fill up, because sometimes people just don't want to be the first. And so we want to start thinking about those things and how they come together, so that as a leader, we can lead, we can teach, we can observe and see what's working, we can analyze how it's going, and then tweak things as we go. And so today we're going to talk about having a clear vision so we can really re-energize our team and focus on what we need to get started. Then we'll dive into our virtual consultation and really start looking at 2 skills. How do we teach how and why, and how do we high-speed coach it? Knowing that that framework can be used for any of the skills or concepts that we talked about. So when we talk about gearing up or building our plan, you know, we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about what's new, right? What's new related to our team experience. We've talked about what's new related to our client experience. We've talked about booking strategies, services, virtual consultations, potentially timing. We've talked about disinfection and sanitation. We've talked about in-salon consultations and setting realistic expectations from our clients. And I've added 3 technical things here just to give some inspiration as I start to build with Shannon and I start to build our actual gear. You know, what are we going to do starting next week? What are some of the technical things we need to start thinking about? You know, is there any remote learning that we think is going to be really relevant to what we're dealing right now? Like, we're worried about our blondes, right? They're going to be very grown out blondes. And maybe we need to refresh with some of our team on undertones and how to deal with some of the things. While this is completely not a sexy title, I call it compression hairdressing, right? Clients aren't going to want to spend 4 hours in the salon with us anymore. And so how do we think about ways, techniques, and methods that let us get the same work done in less time? And last but not least, when we think about corrective color, again, I'm not as worried about people who colored their hair at home and messed it up. I'm more worried about my dark blonde balayage that wants to be as light as me or lighter, and her hair is now grown out to here. Am I going to get her to what she wants to be in one visit? And so these are kind of, if you've been with us along the journey, except for the couple technical things, this is kind of what we've covered over the last 3 weeks. And so let's start thinking about how some of those topics might break down in our next steps. So to give you an example, I'm going to pretend like I know we're opening June 1st. And for those of us in the tri-state area, our salons are in Brooklyn, New York. So our Brooklyn, Jersey, and Connecticut friends, we're in this all together, right? But I'm going to pretend we're opening June 1st, for example, right? And hopefully that'll be true. So what we're going to do starting next week is start thinking about what can we do remotely with our team, all right? And when we think about remotely what we can do with our team, one thing that we're going to talk about is our team experience. So we're going to have 2 one-hour webinars next week with our team. And based on whether you receive PPP or not, and where your cash flow is or not, you can decide whether you pay for these or not. As you know, we receive PPP, not PPE. And so we're going to look about how do we compensate our team for this training as we move through, because PPP gives us the funding to do that, right? So when we talk about our team experience, just to give you a few of the things that we've covered so far that we might be talking about, right? As you know, we've launched a new app. We're now giving our team the ability to book appointments on that app, so they have more mobility with booking the appointments. We've set up their goals in our salon software system too. So while they all know it's there, we're going to walk through how to use it. We're going to be launching Salon Scale, which you guys know about. We're going to start talking about what the opening schedule is going to look like for hours and what our opening plan related to schedule is. Now, I haven't pieced the people together. I'm just saying to myself, these are the hours I want to be open, and these are how many people I want to have in each of those hours, right? Because if I have 30% of my team that are scared to come back right away, my puzzle might look different, but I need to know where my pieces need to go, if that makes sense. We're going to start warming them up to sanitation and disinfection and what it's going to look like so they can start to feel confident that we've put a strategy in place to protect them. We're asking all of our team to get the Barbicide certification. I think it's a nice to have. And then we'll talk about what our goals are going to be over the next few learning times together. Our second webinar is going to be around remote learning. And so we happen to have, with our education manager and our KRM, we've worked through a large part of our group was going to be attending the Welcome Wednesday, is what our distributor calls it, but it's the kind of get to know Goldwell classes. And they missed the blonding one when we all shut down. So one of the things we're going to be doing is and since our fear right now is blonding and our blondes, we're going to set it up some remote learning for them related to blonding. And so I'm trying to tease them with a little bit of business and a little bit of technical, because I know if I give them too much business, it doesn't all absorb. And I know the technical stuff is the stuff they love. I'm just the stuff that, keeps the pony running smoothly, right? As we go into the next week, we're going to start talking about what's new for the client experience, right? Again, we've talked about these things. So what does the app look like for the client? We're going to be launching a Shopify store to keep our curbside pickup going in an easier way. We're going cashless. What does that mean? For those of you, we talked about finances, our green fee's changing. We're now calling it an environmental stewardship fee. And our cancellation policy, we're now adding, for lack of a better word, a COVID exception, right? If they're sick, stay home. I'm not going to charge you a fee, just don't come. And so we'll start to talk about what that's going to look like as a difference in our client experience. Then we're going to come back and talk about booking strategies and the services that we're going to offer. And so we will more than likely not offer blow dry short term. And so within that, we're going to be training, and we haven't decided the final looks yet, but something like a Lo Xing Yang or a braid or two, or, you know, something so the client can still in warm weather feel like they're finished, but not get blow dried. And so we'll be training on what that's going to look like. We're going to train on the virtual consultations, and I'll take you through what that's going to look like in a minute. If you're going to go talk about timing, remember we talked about, do you start charging by the hour or by the half hour instead of for the service? If that's something you're looking to do, that might be a conversation as well. The next thing that we're going to do is, what can we do in person? And so the week before we open, we're going to have our team together for 2 half-day sessions. And for us, it's going to be and I'm going to pretend like we have one location just to make it easy, right? So for that location, we're going to actually have 4 sessions. Team A is going to have 2 sessions, and Team B is going to have 2 sessions. Why? Because if I have people that might be nervous coming back to work, I want to provide development for them in maximum social distancing. For people that are emotionally scared or anxious, that first step back into the salon is going to be the hardest, and this is going to be that first step. And so I want to make sure that it feels good, it feels safe, and that I can work through any anxiety that happens. We're going to rehearse sanitation and disinfection, right? I want them to see what it's supposed to look like. I want to work through the script. If I'm going to ask a client for a thermometer to take their temperature, I want to practice that. You know, I want them to see how we're going to disinfect things and walk through that process with them, so that on the first day, it's not like we're tripping over each other trying to figure out what to do. Then we're going to have some technical training that afternoon on how to do things faster and more efficient. I'll call it compression training, right? In what are some great techniques that give you maximum coverage with the least amount of foils and things like that. The next day, we're going to get into consultation expectations, because remember, there's now going to be three or four questions that was in our sanitation guidelines that they're now also going to ask the client. There may be a waiver, because some states are requiring a waiver that the client now needs to fill out. And so I want them to feel comfortable with those steps and understand what it's going to look like. And then we're going to get into some corrective training on how do we start thinking about, if, you know, we probably do, I'd say 50% of our business ends up blonde, and blonde could also mean fashion color, but we got them blonde first. And so if that's all grown out, what are the things we've got to start looking for and being careful of and reacting to, so that what we don't end up with is increased redos because of services being different than what we're used to. And so I think that's kind of where we start to think about, how do you take everything that we've done over the last 3 webinars and start thinking how each piece fits in. And now I'm going to take a couple questions.
Yeah, a couple of questions here. Are you advising the stylist to perform everything, including the shampoo, or are you having assistants shampoo still?
That's a really great question. We will probably, and you also have to remember we're in New York City, right? And so the level of emotion and sensitivity is extremely heightened. So knowing that, we will probably not have our apprentices involved in services, at least until we get through the first round of the dance and we understand it. We work through everyone's fear, both the employees and the clients, and we just get to a good place. Once we get beyond that and we kind of know what it looks like and we've worked through the kinks, then we may look at it differently. But for the short term, I don't believe we'll do that. And so then we'll have to start thinking about, what does the role of our apprentices do? We happen to have one that is very near completion. And because we've gotten the PPP funding, we may bring her in, or will get one, we're not funded yet, but we may bring her in for massive training in the beginning and models, because she's at the model phase now, so that we can get her finished so that she can be an active stylist on the floor quicker, so that we don't lose her, because you know, our apprentices are amazing. We're also going to cross-train our apprentices in the front desk, because they will now have to be wherever we need them. it may not be supporting a stylist. And so we're trying to kind of cross train everyone so that we're prepared for whatever it might look like.
Great. We have a salon that's scheduled to reopen at the end of the month. She's all prepared with her sanitation equipment, her PPE, but her stylists are giving her a little bit of pushback and fighting her on coming back. Any suggestions on that?
I get it. You know, and I think, guys, that's the piece, you know, I'm like probably a lot of you, like I can work a checklist like nobody's business. You give me the stuff and I can get it prepared, but now's where the rubber's going to hit the road, right? And so I think our opportunity here, and that's why I say you need to build a template of what the salon needs so that you know what you want it to look like, right? And that's the framework, because you can't start by going, you know, hey, Christine, what do you want to work when you come back? Hey, Autumn, when do you want to work? Because then you'll have like a stylist from 1 to 3, one from 9 to 1, and that's it. Like, right? So that doesn't work. But I think where the rubber meets the road is starting to have these conversations early. And that's why it's important to start gearing them up early with everything you've been working on, right? To create a better experience for the client, a safe environment for them so that they have information and can feel better. And when I say information, I don't just mean sidebar conversations, right? Because sidebar conversations, people take those lightly. They don't always pay attention. Like, I want them to see, okay, guys, we're gearing up and there's some formality and some fun to it, but at the same token, let's get to business and talk about where we are. The next piece of that is you got to have empathy, right? This is different than anything we've done before. And so you may have to phase in just because your team makes you, right? And so, you know, I would ask, as I go through this coaching process later, you can use that same process, but I would just ask some real good questions. You know, tell me how you're feeling. You know, when are you hoping to be able to come back? You know, what's the biggest obstacle standing in your way? How can I help you? Right? Because what I found in Atlanta, where I've talked to a couple different salon owners that opened, and they have very different experiences. One is experiencing exactly what you did. And what they found is once they got 3 or 4 days in and they kept communicating with support and empathy, then all of a sudden the team started going, okay, I'm next. Okay, I'm next. Okay, I'm next. But sometimes people are scared and just don't want to be the first one. This is different. You've got to respect that, right? Now, I think at some point the rubber meets the road that you have to staff your salon. And so if this turns into front desk or this turns into apprentices or things like that, after a couple weeks, I mean, again, you can fill the positions with someone else, right? And at the same token, I would, when it's time to come back, I would send an official communication to your team after you do something fun like this to let them know when their job is available for them to come back to work. Because at some point, you'll want to pull the trigger between, okay, you have a job, you need to come back, or inform the state that they've refused to come back to work. Because what they can't do is live off of unemployment when you've chosen to have, when they have a job available. I don't mind a week or 2 of empathy. But then after that, we've got to be business owners, right? And work on how we get them back to work. But you might have to be flexible, bring somebody back in 2 days a week. Maybe if your whole team's worried, do team A and team B. So they're with the same people every day and they're not crossing over lots of different people so that they're feeling a little more isolated, right? So those are just a couple strategies you could use to help them get them over the hurdle. We just have to remember this isn't the stylist with nobody on their book wanting to come to work, not wanting to come to work pre-COVID. It's just different.
Right. Thank you. That's great.
All right. Any other questions?
We're good for now.
Okay, cool. All right. So now what I want us to think about in this, and we're not going to go through this piece again, but I want us all to take a deep breath. This was, I mean, we've spent probably close to 6 hours together over the last 3 weeks, and we've covered a lot. So what I want you to do is take a picture of this, and I'm going to give you a second to do it. And as you start to plan for your gearing up, I want you to print this. And I'm old school, so I still like paper. Sorry about that. If you're fancy on your iPad, you can do this on your iPad without printing it. But what I want you to do is look at what's important for you, right? So you may not be worried about corrective color because you have an all experienced team. Cross that one off. You're not, like, they're all good with extended roots. You might say, you know what, we're not going to go to hourly pricing and we're not doing virtual consultations. you know, circle the ones that are important to you, X-nay the ones that aren't. You don't have to do it all. What's most important in this is the point is pick a few things and win big. The key is to get your team excited and to really start helping them feel prepared, not overwhelmed, and so that you can get great execution from your team and they start to feel comfortable. Okay? Because if you give all of them this the day before they start, they're already afraid and anxious, and then they're going to be overwhelmed, and that's only going to make things harder. Right? So now's the time, depending on when you're opening, to just start gearing up. And we're going to try to start 3 weeks in advance. I'm hoping we're opening June 1st. The reality is our governor may push it back again, but we're going to start that process now. Now, if you're a week away, cool. Pick the one thing they have to know now and pace this over their first couple weeks of training. Maybe you focus on sanitation and disinfection and booking right now. Right? And then you take the next thing, but think through how you pace this in a way that's fun and isn't force-fed. So now let's dive into how I would teach one of these, because we've got a lot of new strategies in here. Some of them are just show and tell, but even the things that are show and tell, like our app, I'm going to have our whole team download it together. I'm going to have them look at it. I'm going to have a book appointment for themselves on it. If they don't know how to use it, they're never going to tell a client that we have this cool new app. I'm going to have them all go to Shopify. I'm going to have them buy an Oribe product. Just don't take it all the way to the cart. Like, I want them to know we do curbside pickup, and this is the new feature we have with our software, our salon software system. Now I'm going to dive into virtual consultations, because this is going to be one of the key things that I'm going to teach our team. And so what's important here is we've given them a clear vision of everything we're going to talk. We've broken things into what we can do remotely and what we're going to do in person the week before. Now we're going to get into teaching them how and getting into the high-speed coaching. So when I talk about the how and the why, the most important thing for us to think about is so many times when we launch something, we talk about it. We tell people what to do, and then it doesn't stick, right? We do it for a week because it sounds new and exciting, then we give up. What's important here is the what only tells the content of what we're doing. So think about this as a recipe. How many people like to cook? I mean, we are all cooking a heck of a lot more than we ever have, right? And so if we think of this as a recipe, the what is really just the ingredients, right? So if I'm teaching my team something new, or if I'm implementing a new strategy, or if I'm doing a retail sale, whatever it might be, and I just give them the what, all I'm doing is giving them the grocery list. Not how much we need, not how you mix it, not how you cook it, none of that. I'm just giving them the grocery list. So, but just because you have the ingredients doesn't mean that the recipe will come out right. And so what I want us to think about these next two steps, which are even more important. The how is really the context of your learning. So, and I like to call it kind of how you serve it or experience it. The how is how you build self-awareness, discover winning strategies, start to gain commitment. And if we head back to that recipe example, the how is really the details or the steps in your recipe, right? So how much of those ingredients are going to use? When do you put them in? How do you practice? What don't you do? I mean, now it's even the videos and the picture steps that go with the recipes, right? And now, last but not least, when we think about the why, what we think about in the why, I joke when I go back to the recipe example, the why is your grandmother's secret touch, right? It's the ingredient or method that makes it memorable and unique. It's what makes it stick with you. Like, I'm here with my parents in Florida, and my mom always makes me a spinach pie when we come, right? I've got the ingredients at home. I've got the recipe at home, but there's something about it when mom makes it, right? That is just so much different than everyone else. And so that's that why. The why is the purpose, the values, the personal motivation. It's the whole reason why we do things. You know, if your team doesn't buy into the why, it won't become part of your culture. And so remember, as we go through, my tension today is for us not only to learn what we should do next, but to really be able to have long-term sustainable results in our future. And so let's dive into teaching the how and the why when it comes to virtual consultations. So when I think about the what, the how, and the why, there's 3 things I'm going to look at here. The what, that's my details, my tools, my price, that kind of stuff. And I would take a picture of this if you have the opportunity. The how is going to be about the method you're going to use. It might be a winning script and what you teach them to say. It might be how you get them to practice. It might be some of the how you handle objections. The why is going to be, why is this important? What's in it for them? And those 2 are really your secret sauce of how you get them over the hurdle. And I'm just going to peek real quick at people taking pictures just to make sure I've given you enough time. And you're welcome to put in the chat if you need me to come back to something. And so when I think about my virtual consultation, and this is going to be important because how did you guys feel the first time you were on a Zoom meeting? Was it weird? Yeah, right? You were like, okay, you know, I'm still trying to Zoom hug and nobody really hugs me back. So for your team, they probably haven't been on as many Zoom meetings as maybe you have, right? And or if they have, they're happy hours and fun. So we want to think about how do we want to break this down in a way that's meaningful? So when I think about a virtual consultation, here's my what. We're going to do this with Zoom sessions, right? So we have a Zoom account, as you know. Well, I do that with Zooms with my clients all the time. And so in our Zoom account, we've set up 2 users because we have 2 locations. And so as we book reservations, as we talked about before, if they have an extended visit, meaning they haven't been in a really long time, or they've done something to their hair at home, they will automatically go to a virtual consultation. And so our front desk team will have time slots each day by employee that they can book these virtual consultations starting the week before we open. And so we're hoping that we can get this done in 30 minutes a day by team member. They'll have a centralized login. They can use any device, although we have iPads in the salon that they can use. And these are going to be 10-minute sessions. Now, remember we talked about we might have to pivot. We may find as we start to rebook clients that maybe we need a lot more of these. Maybe we need less of these. Again, this is just the framework to get us started. It's going to be complementary, and the intention, guys, is triage. Down the road, I might charge for a virtual consultation that maybe I tried $25 or $50 for, that's going to be a in-depth, detailed consultation. This is going to be enough information so that I know I booked the correct amount of time in the appointment. Okay, and that I have a good idea what I'm walking into from a hair perspective. Okay, the other thing that I'm going to do inside of this what, as I get into the how, is if my team isn't familiar with Zoom, because I didn't include this because I know my team is, because we've done a lot of Zoom time together over the last few weeks. But if they're not that familiar with Zoom, I'm going to have to throw a Zoom lesson in there too. Okay, so keep that in mind if that's how you're doing it. If you've got an iPad in your salon, maybe you FaceTime. But again, not everybody has an Apple device. So you just have to, Zoom's an easy way that any device can use it. All right, so when I start to think of my how here is really important because this is different, right? And I'm also starting to think about the gradient of team members I have. So I have some, like Crystal and Annalisa and Rihanna, who are somewhat new to the floor, anywhere from a year and a half and less, okay? I need to think about how do I set them up for success, but then I also have my top producers that this is gonna be easy peasy for, right? But I wanna set some standards of what this is gonna look like in the house. So the setup. When they have a virtual consultation, they will get the client profile. So in our software system, we can print out the client's last visit, the formulas used, the retail purchases, their previous services, all that kind of stuff. It's a one-pager. So they will get that from the client, and we will also ask the client to submit 4 images. One is what their hair looks like now. We know it can be a lie. That's why we're doing a virtual consultation. 2 is what they'd like their hair to look like, right? And again, I know that might be my regular client, but they've had, 7, 8, 9 weeks at home to strategize a new color. Who knows, right? And then 1's going to be what they don't like. So if I want to be blonde, here's some things I like. Here's a blonde I don't like, right? Just so we kind of know the gradient of where we can go and where we can't go. The questions are going to be, and there can be others. So tell me about your hair routine. I want to understand what they're doing at home. Have you done a home remedy or home hair color? I joked with a Canadian group yesterday, Maybe they didn't color their hair at home, but maybe they saw on YouTube this olive oil, avocado, mayonnaise, lemon mix that's supposed to rejuvenate their hair. Well, you know what? For me to color it, I got to get some of that stuff out, right? And so I need to know, is there a clarifying or detoxifying treatment that I'm going to do beforehand? Or if the routine has not been much of anything, I joke that our Brooklyn clients, they think dry shampoo is shampoo. And I mean, when we talk about extended shampoos in normal life, I can only imagine what they are now. Can only imagine. And so I might not need to think about how do I detoxify their hair and scalp, because maybe they've shampooed twice in 8 weeks. It happens in Brooklyn. Now you shared some images with me, talk me through what you don't like, and then you make a recommendation. What's important here to know is that we give realistic expectations, because a lot of this might take 2 visits to fix. I mean, if they haven't been in since December and they had a balayage and they've got dark, level 2 through 4 hair, there's a chance it's not happening in 1 visit. And so we want to prepare them for what that'll look like, give them a clear picture of that journey, and then lock in both of those visits. Okay? And then when we talk about the why, right? Because everybody's excited about virtual consultations, but once we do it, then what, right? And so when we talk about the why, I want my team to know what it's going to look like before it walks in. I want them to set realistic expectations with their clients. I need to know, are we detoxing or not their hair? Does it need 1 or 2 visits? I want to maximize their timing. I want to be able to pre-sell any retail that they need. And I want to make sure their bookings are accurate, because if we can't double book now, I can't have a client come in, have 2 hours on the book, and then I can't do their hair in that amount of time because it's a completely different project than I thought it was going to be. And so what's important here is we're going to break them into groups, and we're going to have some role plays for them to do. And while we do consultations, this is going to be different. Like, I have to get used to going, hey, lean in, let me see what it really looks like now, right? If I've got clients that have always had the same thing, I might have to talk them through why it looks like 2 steps, right? And so we're going to have templated examples for the teams to role play. And then what we're going to do for our newer team members, they're going to have a partner in crime on that webinar with them. So we happen to have a technical training lead in each location, or someone kind of in charge of training. That person is going to be with those newer stylists for their first few, so that we have the ability to coach it with them, right? Because this is going to be weird. It's different when you're sitting down in front of them, right? And you only have 10 minutes. So let's not spend the first 10 minutes just chit-chatting and then we didn't get the work done. What questions do we have?
Give people a minute to put any questions in the chat. Nothing so far.
All right, good. We'll keep rolling. So now what I want us to think about that's going to be super important is, how do we then high-speed coach it, right? Because again, this isn't just about doing it once. This is about a technique that when you're trying to implement anything new, how do you get momentum that lasts beyond today, beyond a week? How do you get it become part of your culture? And one of my good friends who owns a massive salon in Connecticut always says, whatever's measured improves. Whatever we pay attention to is what they work on. And so what's important here is the high-speed coaching. And so a couple things I want us to think about here. If coaching is going to be effective, it has to be specific, it has to be productive, and it has to be in the moment. You can't give feedback to people on a virtual consultation 4 days later that they did 4 days ago, or anything in life that we're coaching. And so we have to think about, particularly, with my experienced people, we might sit through 1, and if they're nailing it, tell them what worked so well and move on. Our newer people, we might need to sit on 3 or 4 or 5 till we can get them really effective and able to handle some of the objections they might get from clients. And so let's quickly talk through that process. When we think about high-speed coaching, first we have to watch what they've done and observe it. We've got to listen. We've got to ask some really good questions. We have to offer some coaching, and then we have to be willing to give some praise. And what's going to be important right now is the praise, and how and when that praise comes, because our team is so emotional right now, right? As some of us are starting to feel it now that we're getting a date. And I'll walk you through an example. So obviously, look and listen. Those are the easy ones, right? But we've got to make sure that we plan time. And it doesn't have to be every single one, but we plan time to pay attention, right? We can't just launch it and go, let's go, and then never come back and see it again. But we've got to take an opportunity with everyone on our team to see it and to hear it. Then give me a second to move you guys over. When we think about ask, and these questions might be different depending on the level of experience that I'm working in. So I've seen Melinda do her first virtual consultation. I've seen what she was set up with, and I got to see the questions she asked and the commitment she got. Okay. Now I might say, hey, tell me about one thing that the client was looking for. How did you address, and let's say she did a home treatment, right? How did you address her home treatment? What was most meaningful in this to the client? What are some things you learned? What expectations did you set? And what would you recommend or agree on next time? And remember, my favorite question is tell me more, right? And just keep asking. Because what I've got to start looking for is, what is the team seeing? We're not used to doing this virtually, right? And sometimes we just sit back and have a conversation. Well, a consultation seeing my hair doesn't work like this, right? I need to be able to understand where they are, see it, be part of it, be close to it. And some of that's going to be important. If you're watching the virtual consultation, and I think it's Olympia that I can see on the top of my screen. Hi, Olympia. And you've got your hair pulled back. So if I notice one of my team members is doing a virtual consultation and the woman's hair is in a ponytail, like Olympia's is, and they don't think to ask to have it taken down, how are they doing that consultation, right? You don't know what's back here if you can't see it. And so those are the things up front you're going to want to do, because again, they're going to be nervous. They already have enough anxiety from being home as long as they have. And this process is different. They're used to be able to feel it, see it, touch it, play with it, and we're such kinesthetic learners that we just need to spend a few minutes with these first ones to make sure that they're rocking and rolling. And then last but not least is how we coach it. And the first thing we're going to have to ask is, are you open for some coaching? And here's what I want us to think about, guys. Autumn and I were talking earlier today, and one of the biggest challenges that one of the salons that they work with is facing is the emotions of the team, right? They're so high strung right now that everything is a big deal. And when they go into the back room, everything is emotionally a big deal. And the sanitation was the easy part. The emotions have been the hard part. And so what we want to be able to be very empathetic on is, when are they open for coaching and making this process better, whatever the process is, right? I'm just happen to use virtual consultation. And when do we just need to acknowledge their progress? So if I have someone that their emotions are high, I might not ask for coaching, right? Because their emotions are really high right now. But what I might say is, Christine, on that virtual consultation, and I'm going to what was specifically said or did and why it was effective. One of the things you did is you dialed into something different on the ends of her hair. While she told you she hadn't done a home treatment, you could see something different going on, and you asked these 2 follow-up questions. Those were so effective because, right? And leave it at that. Nice job. High five. Or if you've got someone that's brand new, like my Aunt Elisa, the first time I taught her the hydrating haircut, it was the most painful experience I have ever seen in my life when she did it with her first client. Like, I sat at our kiosk watching her, and at one point I just wanted to go, just cut hair. Like, just cut some hair, right? And she just kept talking and talking and talking, and it was so painful. It was scary, right? And she came back to me at the end, and she's like, that was horrible. And I was like, no, it wasn't. You did awesome. And she looked at me and she was like, they said, no, it was horrible. And I'm like, of course it was horrible. The first time you do anything, it's horrible. So high five, you did exactly what you were supposed to. And she just looked at me and she's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yes, nice job. And she was like, okay. I'm like, you gonna try it again? She's like, okay. By the 3rd time she did it, then I was ready to go, okay, are you open for some coaching? Because in the beginning, I just want them to try. Right? I don't want to smash them the first time they do it. I just want them to know I'm grateful that they gave it a whirl. And I want to celebrate when they screw it up. And when they're ready for coaching, I want to come in and help take them to the next level. And I always use the example, if you call our salons, don't now, we're not there. But if you call our salons, we change our phone greeting 3 or 4 times a year based on what we're focused on, right? And if you catch us right when we change it, we sound horrible for 3 days, getting used to the new script. I mean, I had one time that I answered the phone. I couldn't remember our old script. I couldn't remember our new script. I couldn't remember the name of our salon. I couldn't remember anything. And I just stood there like, and it had to be a day, for those of you who know my husband, that my husband's in the salon. I'm like, awesome. And he just looks over at me like, why hasn't she said anything yet? I'm like, and I just went, hello, I'm the owner. How can I help you? Like, I couldn't think of what else to say. And my husband was like, that was awesome, right? But again, anytime we try something new, we suck. It's okay. But that's part of the process. And that's why we want to go through some examples with them up front, so that they can power up and ask silly questions and just have fun with it. But that's why when they get started, we want to do those first couple with them and let them know we care, and let them know that we want this to be for their benefit long-term. Because if we can nail this, think about the revenue we could make down the road with consultations. And even, you know, so many people want to try out a salon and see what it's like, but are afraid to get their hair done. This is such an amazing way to get a teaser in, right? And kind of see style and vibe. And if we could use this down the road, this is just a starting point of what it could be for us down the road. So I'm going to go to questions.
Question about how you keep clients from asking too many personal questions and focusing on the consult only.
That's a great question, especially because they are people deprived as well. I mean, I laugh. I've been canceling, as the pause moves in New York, I've been canceling appointments via my cell phone just because I'm not in the salon. And I was realizing I shouldn't say nobody, but not enough people were checking the email to realize I'd sent out an email saying the pause moved, so did we. And like, I'll have people that just call me back knowing I'm not going to make the appointment, just wanting to chit chat. So I think what's important is you have 10 minutes. And so it's all in the setup. Think about what that's going to look like. So when I set these up, I'm going to say, Christine, it is absolutely amazing to see you. I can't wait for a reservation on Tuesday, right? Because you're going to know when it is. I want to give you 2 things that you're going to need to know about what's going to be different on Tuesday. And then we've got 10 minutes to get aligned on where you are now and where I'm going to take you. Okay. So the couple things that I need you to know in this 10 minutes, here's the couple things we need to accomplish. But what I also want you to know about your visit is we're going to be sending you an email of all the safety and disinfection things we've been working on. We're going to be taking your temperature. I'm going to be asking you health questions when you come in. We're going to, and give them a preview so that they know what to expect. And so now, but what's going to be fun about your service is now I've only got you. So I can't wait to hear what your summer is going to be like while you're processing, because I won't have another client in between. Right? And so now you've got where she can go, oh, we're going to talk the whole time then. Oh, that's going to be great. Right? And now you've kind of set up what you're going to do and then walk her through the process. Okay. But let her know up front, I've only got 10 minutes because I'm trying to work with as many of my clients as I can before I get started today, so that she knows that you're on a time crunch. Right? But let her know that she's going to have some individual time later. We can just go all catch up and have fun. Right? Because that's what they love from us as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. What other questions?
Can you talk about the schedule for the virtual consultations? Is it the day before they work every time? How does that?
All right, so that's going to be a little tricky, right? So what we're going to do is work it a week before in the perfect world. A perfect world isn't going to be perfect. In everything we do going forward, we don't have all the answers. We're going to have to see how it goes. We're going to have to analyze. Then we're going to have to tweak, right? But where we're going to start is if we open June 1st, 2 weeks before is when we're going to start rebooking clients. Now, if we're Texas, we got 4 days notice. Yay! So that, again, we tweak, right? But 2 weeks prior, we'll start booking reservations. My hope is then the week prior, while we're still booking reservations, we're going to have slots with each of our stylists for the virtual consultations, right? And so we'll be able to start triaging that process while we're scheduling it after we've done the training to have it done. Does that make sense? So the day that we do the training, that's a perfect afternoon to take 30 minutes or an hour after the training to get a bunch of clients already booked for Zoom consultations, right? And now we're together and we can help coach it in both of those sessions. Once we open, we're going to try to, on week 1, be doing virtual consultations for week 2. Doesn't mean something for tomorrow might not get thrown in there because they booked last minute. But that's what we're going to attempt to do related to what I'll call those first triage weeks, because I think those will fill pretty quickly with reservations. Just in what I'm seeing in some of the markets like Atlanta that's already opened.
Yep,
And
great.
what we're going and just so you know, what we're going to do is we're going to try to plan the first 30 minutes of their day as when they do those consultations, so they can get them out of the way and then just focus on their clients.
Awesome.
Are we good?
Good.
Okay. All right. Now, here's another tool, and I'd love for you to take a picture of it. And I will send it to Christine when we're done, and she can send it out to you as well. But what I want us to think about is daily communication. You know, I'm a firm proponent of sitting down and having one-on-ones with my team and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you don't do that today, it's not the time to start right this minute. But what we've got to get good at is daily communication. And so this is a tool that I use in our salons. I also use with our clients, and I call it the daily huddle. And when I say huddle, that does not mean that everybody gets together and it's one conversation. That means whoever shows up, meaning if I have one person in the morning and one at 11 and 4 in the afternoon, I'm making it up. That's when I meet with people, okay? The huddle is just a concept of a conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean a group in my scenario. And here's why this is going to be so important. The first few weeks, and we do this every day, COVID, no COVID, but I think it's very relevant now, knowing that communication is key. So that as people come in, once they get settled, I have a one-on-one with them. It takes 2 to 3 minutes. This is not a long conversation, okay? We talk about any results or goals that we have for the day. Most importantly, we celebrate. And here's where this becomes important, right? There's so much emotion. So, you know, it might be day 2 and I want to celebrate our apprentice who did an amazing job keeping everything disinfected for the day before. Or I might want to celebrate our front desk person the first time they had to ask somebody to leave with a fever, right? Because that's a scary thing. Like, we'll do the script, but until you have to do it, it's like, right? Because you're afraid they're going to get mad. Somebody might mechanically just have a really great day of add-ons, even though they had no support. I want to take that time to say thank you. I want to take that time to let them know I saw the energy they put into yesterday, and it made such a difference. If I've got somebody that helped someone else, I might want to share that. If I've got a new team member, not new, but like now they're ready to come to work new, that's feeding in the next week, I might want to tell the rest of the team, we're so excited to have Tony Ann back. She's coming back next week, right? So that everybody's kind of informed of what's happening. When we think about here, where we talk about the today's focus, you know, for me, pre-COVID, for me, this is a selling focus. Okay. What are the things we're talking about today? Do we have a retail promotion? Are we working on our hydrating haircut? But I think what's also important and even more relevant now that we're coming post-COVID is what's shifted from yesterday to today, right? Because we might find the process we set up for disinfection at opening is working or isn't working. And so we made an adjustment. I want them to know before they walk in and their day starts what that might look like, right? I want them to know if we're booking something differently. I want them to know that up front so that they understand what's coming with their day. And then last but not least, I think is critically important, and I call these the need to knows, all right? And so the need to knows are important because think of a time in your life when you were overwhelmed, right? You were anxious, you were afraid. It might be now, but think of another time as well. When something random, which is typically small, right, happens, can it throw you over the deep end, right? You know, if I'm overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed, you know, I could lose my noodle because my daughter can't find her soccer cleat, you know, pre-COVID, right? But it wasn't about the soccer cleat. It was about everything that built, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? It was something silly. The cleat's right there, not a big deal. But it was the thing that, the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I want to make sure that we really start thinking about how we communicate with our team on a daily basis so that that doesn't happen. Emotions are going to be high for the first couple weeks. They're nervous. You're nervous. But so we need to know is if you sold through of something, or you're out of a shade of color, or the foils you usually use aren't there, but you got different ones. Like, tell them those things before the day starts so that it doesn't end up a meltdown because you're out a 9A at BS, which usually doesn't matter because they could do this and this. But today, it's the world's worst thing that ever happened. And I think if we can plan for some of those things and they feel informed and they feel safe and they feel well prepared, it's going to set them up for success. The step 2 that I do with this is I go through their day with them, right? And I help them look for opportunities in their day, both with retail and for upgrades. So that way, when they get ready to take that first client, they're ready to rock and roll. If we need to say, oh, well, how are you going to introduce our new detox treatment or anything like that, I can ask them some cool questions, hear how it sounds, and offer some coaching. But if nothing else, celebration and making sure your whole team is on the same page in those next 3-4 weeks from when you open, it will make all the world of difference in helping them feel prepared. What questions do we have? We good? I didn't see anything orange come up, so I don't think we.
Nope. Anybody have any questions?
All right. So you guys let me off easy this time. So this is how you reach me. We are working on what's next because, you know, I think for those of us gearing up to open, we have one set of problems and one set of anxiety and one set of what we need to do next. For those of you, once we open and get through those first 3 weeks, that's a whole different world. And so stay tuned from your Cal sales team as they start to put through and talk about what's next as we, you know, get post-COVID and really be able to see what our new normal will look like in the future. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be with you guys. Here's how you reach me. I hope you'll follow me on Instagram. And if I can be of any service to you in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm only a phone call, an email, or a message on Instagram away. So have a great day, guys. Stay safe and be well.
Thank you, Allison. And we'll send out a link to this recording as well, and then answer any specific questions that we might have missed today. So you'll get an email from us soon. Thanks, everyone.
All right.